Hey, remember these? They're back, and we've got them on Gearz. You know, one of the most popular modifications that you can do to a car or truck these days is in the exhaust system, because it gives you 3 areas of performance. It looks good sticking out the back, sounds better, and it gives you better performance. I mean, very few modifications give you that much bang for the buck. But where did all this start? I mean, where'd it come from? Well, to find that out, we have to go back a little bit. Way back. Back to there. Now, back in the 40s and 50s, hot rodders were known to cut off their mufflers because they wanted their rods to sound and perform like the race cars their heroes drove on the tracks. Unfortunately, the law frowned on this practice, and tickets piled up on any kid running straight pipes on the street. Then, in 1968, right in the middle of the muscle car wars, a product came out that changed everything. Now, it was about 2 feet long, it was painted red, and you either had them or you wanted them. Now, they were technically called a glass pack muffler, but nobody called them that. No, they were known by the name of the company that made them, the Cherry Bomb. Now, the Cherry Bomb was basically a straight pipe, so it flowed like crazy, and it had baffles inside and a layer of fiberglass to muffle it down and give the engine a throaty roar. Yeah, they were cool. So cool, in fact, that if you had them, you were cool. Even if you wore pants like these. Unfortunately, after a decade or so of complete dominance, well, things changed. People started building street rods instead of hot rods, and muscle cars died, and the Cherry Bomb pretty much went the way of the Pet Rock and the Rubik's Cube. Fortunately, the story doesn't end there, because a few years ago, a dedicated group of guys decided they were going to bring Cherry Bomb back better than ever.
We purchased Cherry Bomb March 2006 and thought, wow, what a name. I mean, it's just an icon in the automotive industry that's just been laying dormant.
Every one of them has a story about their first, it's always their first muffler. What, they got a ticket, or they did something and made people mad, or it was just that whole image.
The mufflers are built in the same massive facility in Loudon, Tennessee that they were 40 years ago, with a small dedicated staff putting them together. However, the idea here is not just to make them like they did before. No, they want to make them better.
We've moved back in the 60s, 70s. Those were made out of cold-rolled tubing, which cold-rolled rust. As everybody remembers, you know, mufflers used to fall out pretty quick. Now they last. Now it's aluminized, and we use a powder coating on them instead of just a traditional red paint.
Now, that's all great, but Cherry Bomb's not just about glass pack mufflers, because the exhaust world is much bigger and more diverse than that. Now, if you're going to compete, you got to keep up with current technology. Now, you've probably always wondered where exhaust tubing comes from. Well, believe it or not, it starts out as a big roll of flat steel like this. And then you're not going to believe the process it goes through. Come on. The flat steel is fed into a massive machine that looks like an oversized erector set. There, a series of rollers and dies slowly bend and curve the metal until it's a perfect tube. The tube is then welded together, the weld seam sheared off, and after the smoke clears, out rolls a piece of exhaust tubing ready to go on your project. Wow. From there, the tubing is either shipped out or it goes to benders and assemblers so it can be built into a factory replacement system for your vehicle. And new systems are being designed and tested all the time. Now that's cool, but what about those 2 biggies? Sound and performance. I mean, an exhaust system isn't worth squat without those, right? Right. Now, what we've got here is Cherry Bomb's dyno room. You may notice this looks a little different than your typical dyno room because they've got all kinds of foam sound deflection all over here. It looks like a sound stage, which it kind of is, because any good performance muffler gives you performance and sound. So that's what they tune for in here. So what are these little... The dyno was actually used to ring the mufflers out and see what they have to offer.
That's what you call a classic sound.
That's a classic sound. Flow benches are also used to not only develop lines of performance mufflers, but also to test high-flow catalytic converters that bear the Cherry Bomb name.
No way.
Now that's great, but with the development of the chambered-style Vortex muffler, Cherry Bomb has once again set the performance world on its ear, just like it did in '68. Grab one of your competitors. Let's see what we got.
All right.
Okay.
Hold up.
That was 70%, right?
Yes.
You gotta be kidding, is that it?
It flowed about like that original replacement converter, right?
Whose is this?
It's not.
Oh, no, you can't show that.
No, we won't. We won't say anything.
That was
We won't say
awesome,
anything.
You know, there's an old saying out there, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I guess that's true here, because there's been a lot of changes in the exhaust world over the last few years. The one thing that hasn't changed, you either have Cherry Bombs or you wish you did.